Spirit. Each week, we bring you inspiring stories, insightful conversations, and practical tips to help you create a life of balance, peace, and purpose. Whether you're seeking guidance on personal growth, wellness, or simply need a moment to reconnect, this is your safe space. I'm your host, Brianna, and I'm so glad you're here. Let's dive in and take care of the soul.
Hi, I'm Valentina Gaylord, author of the new book, Well-Being by Hay House Publishing, and I'm here to talk with the fabulous Brianna about my journey of overcoming autoimmune and healing my body holistically.
Thank you for joining us. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I want to really get into this because I have a couple of friends that are dealing with autoimmune diseases and they are suffering from. I have one friend, she has a couple of them, and she's continuously in pain or she's having to go to the doctor. She has her latest battle is, and I can't give you the names of them, she's losing teeth. And then I have other friends that are having to deal with hair loss, alopecia. And I said, I've never seen this many people or women dealing with alopecia, and so, but the doctors are always, every diagnosis is an autoimmune disease. And so I'm excited about hearing your journey. I have your book. I have been reading your book and finding it very useful when I'm speaking with them and trying to encourage them that they can really, um, combat what's going on within their bodies with natural treatments versus all this medicine that they have been prescribed and things of that nature. So I want you to tell us, start us from the beginning because you were a successful businesswoman when all of this stuff started happening.
And
So,
it all started, I was starting my business and I had moved to a new state with my family, and it was just very uncommon ground. But leading up to my illness was a very, very stressful period of my life. And so as soon as we made the move, within 6 months, I woke up, thought I was having a stroke. And it turned out, we were in the ER, turned out it was Bell's palsy.
mhm,
And I went into MRIs. I went into all sorts of study and research because it wasn't as common as it's becoming, unfortunately. And I started doing acupuncture treatments to help get my face back because in the world I was living in, you start with the physical appearance, right? How do I make
mhm,
myself look better to make
mhm,
myself feel better?
mhm,
So I left the hospital, and doctors, they tell you the worst case scenario. It's never going to go away. You're never going to be normal again. It could come back if it does, and what have you. And of course, I'm a triple Capricorn and very analytical, and I'm like,
mhm.
we'll see. I'm like, not going to take that. And intuitively, I knew that wasn't the answer. So I started aggressive acupuncture on my face and my body. For 6 weeks, 6 days a week. And it recovered my face about 90%. But then as the days went on, different things started happening, different symptoms started coming about, things that, you know, at the time just weren't just weren't things that I'd ever experienced.
Mhm.
The brain fog, the body aches, not being able to get out of bed, feeling unwell and tired, like utter exhaustion. And at the time, working full time. So, and caring for two young children and in a new state. And this is when I decided, okay, I was in a state where we came from California and we moved to Texas, and there wasn't a huge fitness scene where we were living in a
Mhm.
community in the DFW area. And so I thought, you know what, I'm going to open up a new studio that I was doing while I was in California that I loved, and I'm going to, work on the physical aspect and see if I can make these symptoms dissipate. And meanwhile, I'm going to all these doctors who are giving me these, like, I look back and they were giving me their ideas of what they thought it was, trying to get me to go on multiple medications, thinking antidepressants would help. I wasn't a depressed person. I knew that's not what it was. They were giving me diagnosis of lupus, MS, Parkinson's, like you name it. And they would just look at me and just diagnose me, not even do
Mhm.
blood work. And then as I was looking for locations to open up my first studio, we found out about this doctor for our children in Austin, Texas, who was an allergist because our children have severe food allergies. So lots of chronic stress in my life was going on.
Mhm.
And so we moved to Austin and I opened up the first studio there, and I was still continuing to go to specialists. And nothing was really working. And I was opening up this business, and now I'm in the wellness studio from finance to wellness. And I'm thinking, how am I going to do this? But I'm a worker. I work 24/7, 365. My passion is helping people, and research. And so I was getting sicker and sicker. And at one point, I was so convinced that I had a brain tumor that was undiagnosed, even though I had had MRIs. But my uncle in Australia had passed from a brain tumor and there was cancer in my family. So I thought, I'm target, right? And so then I tried everything. I went to every specialist and they kept telling me things intuitively that I knew was not what was happening to me. And so I started doing some research, and then this book came into my life by Anthony William, The Medical Medium. And I read it from cover to cover, and I thought to myself, this is exactly what's going on with me. And so I got a call with him, and I did
Mhm.
it in a way where he wouldn't know anything about me because I'd never worked with a medium before. I wanted to know this was legit.
Okay, I want you, before you go on with that, explain to the audience what is a medical medium?
Well, he has a gift that he was given since he was 4 years old,
Mhm.
and he can intuitively tell what is going on with your body at the deepest level because he's connected to a spirit that talks through him, and he's
Mhm.
phenomenal. But when I first heard about it, I was skeptical because I didn't understand this world, but every doctor I've been through, and I've been to some of the best in the country, failed me, in my opinion. And so this was my last resort. Like I was getting my business in order, I was getting everything in order. I was even thinking about the living trust, and I
Mhm.
thought I was at death's door. This was not how I wanted to raise my kids. This was not what I wanted for my life. This was not who I am.
Mhm.
And I never thought I would ever recover. That's how
Mhm.
sick I was. I
Mhm.
thought my hair was falling out, my body was changing, my energy was gone, my light was gone, like my hope was gone.
Mhm.
This man was my last hope.
Mhm.
And I get on the phone with him, and of course, I'm so nervous. I'm talking, 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 talking. And then he stops me. He's very gentle, wonderful voice. And he starts talking. And I asked him some questions. And he said, this is what's going on in your body. And he told me I had EBV in my thyroid and in my liver, which is the root cause to most autoimmunes.
Mhm.
And they lay dormant until certain things wake them up. And we are all born with this virus from what, you know, his research had, what his gift is allowing people to understand.
So what is this virus?
It's Epstein-Barr virus. So a lot of people, if you've ever had the chicken pox,
Mhm.
it's what causes chickenpox. It's in your body, and you can
Mhm.
inherit it through generations. And so um, he said, I want you to call your doctors and I want you to have them run these tests. And these were tests that these doctors should have known to run and should have ran because I had every other test run imaginable. And so I called my doctor, and at the time I found a great doctor who didn't want to keep putting me on medication. She wanted to help me figure this out. And so the next day, um, I had these tests run. I had a ultrasound of my thyroid, of my liver, and I had blood tests run for EBV, which I
Mhm.
had done before, but I had them run for everything else that I was told I had. And within 48 hours, I got the results back, and they were exactly what he said they were. So I started his protocol, and it was basically healing my body with a handful of supplements and plant-based food, which I was mostly plant-based, but when you realize the food that heals your body and the food that you think is healthy that doesn't heal your body, it's a huge shift.
Mhm.
And so within weeks of being on his protocol, everything was coming together. The symptoms were going away. Everything was just like I was starting to feel better again. I got my energy back. I had hope again. And it was amazing. And I understood what my body was telling me on a physical level.
Hmm.
But then things started happening in my business. And I was, as a business owner, we all go through things. And some really traumatic things had happened to me through that time. And during all of these challenges, I found myself getting sick again,
Hmm.
like those things again.
Yeah, I want to stop you there because when I was reading, I want to say that it was some of what you were going through was betrayal.
Oh, yes, yes. And who hasn't gone through betrayal? But
Hmm.
this was brutal because I had built 3 studios from the ground up. I
Hmm.
had provided for everyone, even through the worst case scenarios, through the pandemic when nobody was paying their staff. I was
Hmm.
paying them exactly what they were making when we were open, even
Hmm.
though the studios weren't making any money. I
Hmm.
took care of my entire staff and I always made sure the stress was off of them and on me. And there was about 7 people who turned against me behind my back, created like a mutiny that stemmed from my business partner's wife, who went behind both of our backs to do
Hmm.
this. And I was like, I built these businesses from the ground up. I
Hmm.
sacrificed everything for these people and these studios. And I intuitively knew what was going around, what was happening. I've been intuitive my whole life.
Hmm.
So it's one of those things where if I ask you a question, I already know the answer and I know
Yes.
it's lying to me. And I told my lawyers what was happening, and my lawyers had known me forever, and they were like, "No, nobody could do that to you." And I'm like, "Yeah, they're doing it." And then it ended up going through to an arbitration because I fired the major person who was cultivating this, and then everyone that was part of it.
Hmm.
And within 2 years of the arbitration, everything I told my lawyer was happening behind my back was in fact happening. I'm
Hmm.
just very intuitive. I just know things. And if I
Hmm.
like I used to gently warn people about things and if they didn't listen,
That's how
things
it is. That's how it
yeah.
is.
And I don't do that anymore because people have to learn their own lessons and I'm not going to give advice that they're not going to take and because I just know, I know.
Hmm.
And so I went through this horrible thing and my you know those symptoms started coming back because when you're going through high levels of stress
Hmm.
and you're still running a business and taking care of 2 small children and then this was during and the pandemic and
Hmm.
well it was before the pandemic then the pandemic hit. It was like all of these things and then then when the pandemic was in the midst of the worst of it, um, something happened again with my business partner, and it just caused me to go into another very stressful, high pressure situation. And I loved what I built. I built award-winning studios. I won visionary awards. Like I built something really special and really unique.
Hmm.
But it was like it took a direction I didn't really want to go in. I wanted to build a whole body wellness center, and this was just the physical aspect of it. So those 10 years were like research and development for me now that I
Hmm.
look back
Hmm.
because of what I'm building now.
Hmm.
And you have to go through those experiences because you have to learn. I was way too nice. People mistaked it for weakness. And I'm like, I am not a weak person.
Hmm.
But I was a kind person, just kind of the wrong people. But now I know who I'm hiring, who I'm not hiring, who's going to work for me, who isn't. And things have changed dramatically. But
Hmm.
during this time, I was going through my healing journey and things were coming back. And I started doing more reflection and more internal work, realizing that, okay, what led up to my illness? What keeps playing out in my life that continues to bring me to a point of illness?
Hmm.
And what's taking away my light?
Hmm.
And that's when I did that deep dive into my being and really started to understand the patterns that were reoccurring in my life, the people that kept I kept bringing into my life, the lessons that kept showing up, and
Hmm.
realizing they weren't going to change unless I changed.
Hmm.
And so a lot of people, especially as women, we're so intuitive. We
Hmm.
know things at our
Hmm.
core, but we're afraid to listen. We don't want to listen or we don't trust it. And I'm very analytical. So I did that deep dive and I uncovered all of this stuff about, you know, the 6 years leading up to my illness.
Mhm.
What was happening in my life? What was I allowing in my life? And then these other experiences that came into my life that were the same kind of situations, just different people, different players. But the message was the same. And so when I started doing that work, I went into I started with my mindset and really working on the stories we tell ourselves, the programming that we hear, that we take on as our own. But
Mhm.
it's not really our story. It's not meant to be our story.
Mhm.
And then really focusing on my intuition because it has never been wrong. And then there's a lot about accepting where you've been, the people that you've allowed in your life, and, then facing it. So I started really doing this work with acceptance and really changing, making
Mhm.
major changes in my life. And then the pivotal moment was in 2022. My father passed away.
Mhm.
And during the time where he was on hospice and crisis care, these investors approached me and wanted to buy my business. And I sold it basically for so little just because I wanted to get out from under it. I knew there was something more out there for me and something bigger I was going to build. And, so I did. I
Mhm.
sold really quickly and stayed on for a little while. And then I was just like, I'm done.
Mhm.
And then I moved on and I thought I was going to give myself like a year to really grieve and heal, but
Mhm.
I've done so much of that over those last, especially 4 years, I would say. And then the night I walked away from my business, a person called me up out of the blue who I hadn't spoken to in 11 years. And
Mhm.
she was like, "You need to meet my agent. You need to write your book." And I'm like, I always knew I'd write a book,
Mhm.
always knew I'd write 3 books, and I'm
Mhm.
writing two more
Mhm.
as I speak.
Mhm.
But so it was like all this stuff started happening, and I didn't get a minute of rest in the last 2 years. The book came out. It was published by Hay House, which was my dream publisher. You
Mhm.
know, that was a big part of my story when I was 21. Was a
Mhm.
book by Louise Hay, who changed the trajectory back then. So you see how everything starts to come back full circle, and then
Mhm.
these things that I wanted to create in this business I originally set out to create, people were coming in back into my life and saying,
Mhm.
"Where's this? Where are you at with that? Let's do this." And so, I'm in another creating and building phase. But
Mhm.
throughout all of this, there was this deep dive into my mental wellness and then the emotional wellness of what I experienced losing my father. And walking away from the business that I was in 24/7, 365 for the last 10 years and everything I sacrificed for that business and that time with my family, my young kids and who I was.
Mhm.
That person I was during those 10 years wasn't who I was before or after. It was like a shell of a person walking through these motions and having these experiences and getting their ass kicked in different ways to wake up, to do what I'm meant to be doing. And
I don't mean to stop you, but I want to stop there because I think a lot of times, and me included in this, is that we are pursuing things that in the meantime we're pursuing them, they seem to be successful, even though we are, as you say, getting our behinds kicked and pursuing all of this, but the shell of a person that we become, where we're missing those important moments and we're not realizing it really. Or if we are realizing it, we are thinking what we're doing is for a greater cause.
well, yes, in a way, because
Mm-hmm.
when you're younger too, you think you have all this time
Mm-hmm.
and you think that you keep building, you keep going, you keep, it's like in my heart and soul, I wanted to help people and I wanted to create a safe, beautiful place for people to come and a safe, beautiful place for my staff. I wanted to create a family.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and like all families, you have those people who
Mm-hmm.
aren't so nice,
Yeah.
and you invite them into your world, and they turn around and they take you for granted, or they do
Mm-hmm.
terrible things, and they're doing this right under your roof while you're paying them and educating them and
Yeah.
training. So it's like you learn a lot about people during that time. And,
Mhm.
but yes, it's like the strive for excellence, I think, is in a lot of people. And there's no room for balance when
Mm-mm.
that mindset is all you're focused on.
Yeah. I, I,
So,
I'm I'm sorry. I think this is so good because your story, I I have to say what I feel and what I hear within is that you have let me the way I'm seeing it. So you know how you're making a recipe. You have a recipe, you're getting ready to cook something, and the end result is gonna be this beautiful meal, right? And so it's like your story is packed with so much, and the lessons that your life um has not only for you, but it's for those who are listening because I have so many women. It's a part of your story where I see a lot of women are at right now that are very successful, who have went through the things that you went through, but that component of people, because everybody who sets out to help and wants to create, and because that should be the ideal for everybody, every human, we should want to make the world better, right? And so, but then you get those people who are you're trying to help and you're giving to them just as much as you're giving to anybody else, and they come and they hurt you. And then you get somebody and they hurt, and it's like a continuation of this hurt that you're experiencing from people. What I want to ask you before we go on is how did you navigate this without becoming bitter or shutting yourself off, because that's where a lot of people are. They shut themselves off, and not only are they being careful, but they literally will create a whole village of lookalike people to fit the narrative where they'll never be hurt again. Does that make sense?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, at one point, I was like a shell of a person. I was going through the motions. I was running the business. Deep down, I always knew there was something greater out there for me to create. There was something bigger. There was something better. So I understood where they were at. And I looked at these people as teachers. They
Hmm.
were teaching me so much about myself and what I was tolerating and who was worthy to be in my life and who was not. And those were lessons I had to learn because up until that point, I saw the goodness in everybody. I helped everybody. I cared about everybody. And I'm not saying that's a wrong thing to do, but now it's reciprocated. Now it's like, I'm only going to give you my time and my effort if you give it back to me authentically and genuinely. I'm not going to waste my time with people like that. I didn't get bitter because I saw them for who they were. And I knew where I was going and I knew where they were going. And I also know that when you treat really good people in that way, your life doesn't always turn out the way you think it's going to turn out. You you get that back. And I had always been a very good-hearted person, and I had always worked really hard for everybody else but me. And at that point, and so I just saw what their future would be like. I knew what the writing on the wall would be like. And, you know, I wasn't going to allow that to make me bitter because that only hurts me and my future and what I came here to do. And I know what I'm capable of. I know my circle of friends. I've had them for 30, 40 years. I have solid people in my life, incredible people in my life. And I had faith in that. So I took the time to really dive deep into my soul because I didn't want to become a better person. I didn't want to be an angry person. I knew what that life would look
Hmm.
and I'm just not that person. So doing this work, I found peace for the first time in my life. I found self love at such a depth I've never felt before, and a gratitude for what I've done, what I've built, who I am. And I think a lot of women don't stop to do that. And they need to, because especially for single moms, they do so much for their children, and their children aren't always going to show that appreciation until they're much older,
Hmm.
and they always do. But you need to be able to shine that light on yourself and just say, look who I am, look what I've done. And look at these people around you who've betrayed you and hurt you and done terrible things to you. And look at them as teachers because there's something you need to learn from that and grow from that. If you stoop to their level, you're not growing and evolving. You're staying stuck.
Mhm.
And I've never refused to stay stuck.
I love it. I think that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that because a lot of women that I see again that come in either for into my private practice or whether they're just friends that I talk to about some of the same things that you described. Um, a hard thing for women, I can speak for women, I can't speak on men, but for women is to actually look in the mirror and look internally at what is it that I am doing, or what is it about my mindset, or what is it about me that I am attracting certain people. Because you get your first lesson at the beginning of the lesson that you're trying that you are in need to learn. If you don't learn it, you repeat it just through different people. It's the
Different players.
same lesson until you get it.
Yeah, and I think when we come into this life, I truly believe there are great lessons for each of us to learn. I don't care what anyone's outside perception looks like. There is internal work for each and every one of us. And when you see a lot of ego, those are the people I feel the sorriest for because
Yes.
it's like they're so stuck
Mhm.
and they won't listen to anybody, and a lot of that is all insecurity and fear based. It's not it's made up. The ego is created by you, by the person.
Mhm.
So it's like, you know in the book, at the end of each chapter, I ask some really deep questions, inviting questions to really help you start that journey. I share my story, but I also invite the reader to start really writing theirs and looking at theirs and seeing how they can change it. Because, you know, through all of this, I went through perimenopause, menopause, and postmenopause. And it was like,
Mhm.
I just got hit with it all. And it was like, I wasn't, at one point after my father died, I did allow myself to kind of fall apart a little bit.
Mhm.
I had to really fall apart. I had to break down those pieces of me that I didn't want to take with me. And, I released a lot of pain and a lot of hurt and a lot of those lessons, and in writing, it was very healing for me, very therapeutic for me. And when I wrote the book and recorded the audiobook, I really wanted the reader to understand that, you know, you're not alone. You are never alone in this. And we have so much support, but until we get to that inner peace and the core of who we really are, our soul, we really don't get on our path in the way we can
Mhm.
need to.
Mhm.
And I think there's a lot of people who want to do a lot of good in the world, but you really need to do this work
Mhm.
because you'll find that special place within you and you'll heal in ways you never thought you could heal. Even trauma. Some people, they carry generational trauma with them and don't even know it.
Mhm.
They grow up with especially if you're a single mom, you're anxious and you're nervous and you have high anxiety. Your children feel that, they absorb that, and it becomes part of who they are.
Mhm.
So, through my children's most formative years, I was high stress, high anxiety, and I know they felt that because now they're teenagers, and I'm like, oh, they got that from me. They learned that from me, and now I'm helping them unlearn it. Luckily, they're very deep, they're very intuitive, and they are really understanding. But I'm doing this work with them because I think the most important thing as mothers is we learn these lessons, we do this work, and then we share it with our children.
Mhm.
They
Mhm.
become the best possible human beings they
Mhm.
can do so much good, but also understand what their journey is.
Yeah.
We can't take away their lessons
Mhm.
as much as we want to, but we can give them wisdom, which is what we gain when we do this work.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like, this book, when I wrote it originally for people with autoimmunes. And I focused on women because we are the ones that carry this huge weight of the world in that way.
Mm-hmm.
And we become sick because of it.
Mm-hmm.
And but I realize now through talking to many of the readers, it's not just for people with autoimmune, it's people who want to just do this work and get to a better place in their life for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Everything else in their life works.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not, it's men, it's women, it's people of all ages.
Mm-hmm.
So that was really, really awesome and helped inspire the second and third book I'm writing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, yeah, but I love to write, and
Mm-hmm.
I always knew this would be part of my journey and part of my life, and but I do feel like a lot of people in the world today, we are carrying around so much programming, especially after everything that's been going on in the world politically and the news and everything we're hearing is so negative and you know, I now in doing this work, I see it differently. I can understand both sides, I can appreciate both sides, but it's not going to affect me in a way that changes my life or makes me angry or upset or
Mm-hmm.
bitter because who am I if I put that into the world? There's just more of that in the world, which I don't want to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope this book helps people heal and see things from a different perspective, that
Mm-hmm.
you can have an opinion,
Mm-hmm.
but it doesn't, if something is in your life that causes you anxiety and stress and anger and bitterness, it's not healthy.
Mm-hmm.
And you
Mm-hmm.
got to get to the root cause of why that is for you, what's triggering you.
Mm-hmm.
Because under triggers is pain,
Mm-hmm.
mostly suppressed.
Yes.
And so if you can bring that up and face it, it's painful. It's the biggest, most uncomfortable thing you may do in your life, but it will
Mm-hmm.
have the greatest rewards.
Yes.
People have to just really get to that point of healing
Mm-hmm.
those deep wounds because we all have them.
We do. And what I love, 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 for one, we are all about transparency. I don't believe that a person can get to where they need to be in life until they can be honest first with themselves,
Yes.
and then they can be transparent with others. You have to be, in order to be able to grow and to really contribute to a relationships, to the world, you have to have a willingness to be vulnerable. Um, and what I love about, especially speaking to you now, is when you talk about being able to look at your children and to, first of all, recognize that during the most informative years of their life, this is where you were, right? So now that they're teenagers, you can see it in operation and you can call it for what it is. A lot
Yeah.
of times we as mothers, we are afraid to call a thing what it is. We're afraid to confront those um previous years of our life where we might not have been the best or operating at the best that we could have. We weren't given handbooks, right?
No,
Giving
we weren't.
ourselves grace, like, hey, I didn't even know. Nobody told me. But it's a hard thing for a parent, a woman, a mother to go back and say, you know what you're doing now, baby. When you were, this is how mommy was operating, and you learned this is a learned behavior.
It is. It is.
Yeah, and being able to be open with them because children literally do, they're just like they're little people. There are little people. There are children, but they're little people that learn the way other people learn. And they learn by the way that we set the example of telling them the honest truth.
Yeah.
I am a flawed, I make mistakes, but I want you to learn from
Mhm.
my mistakes.
Yeah, they both read my book without me even prompting them to.
Mm-hmm.
And they were always gracious through, because I was 24/7, 365 in my business. I was either in the studios, on the phone, always working with clients, whether they were clients of my studio or not. If a woman called me on the phone, I'd spend 2 hours with her talking about what she really needed
Mm-hmm.
and helping her through it, because that's what I love to do, is
Mm-hmm.
just be there to support other women,
Mm-hmm.
other people. It was men too, but just mostly predominantly women in my
Yeah.
business. But my children were, you know, I was always there in the way that I needed to be, but it was just like those one-on-one moments, those really important moments. Like I was, especially when I was sick and running all of this stuff, it was a really difficult time. Those years just flew by. And now they're young adults, and I'm so grateful they turned out the way they did.
Mm-hmm.
And they have dreams, they have ambition, they have goals. But I really wanted them to understand what I went through, because I wanted them to understand, there are many different sides to people.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to look at the lessons that you keep inviting into your life and why.
Mm-hmm.
Because I want them to understand the lesson the first time around and never repeat it.
Mm-hmm.
That's what the goal is, to just really understand it the first time. And they're good kids. They have great hearts, and they're soulful, and they're kind people. And I want them to stay kind.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one thing I know they witnessed with me, was even during everything I went through, I wasn't angry, I wasn't bitter, I wasn't a screamer, I didn't yell. I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't one of those, parents that take it all out on the family. I just like hibernated,
Mm-hmm.
became a recluse. That's how I process
Mm-hmm.
stuff. And I gave that, they gave me the space. They honored that. They knew, because I'd like, look, mommy's going through something you don't understand, but I need some time right now. And I was always there. I was always in the home, but I was working.
Mm-hmm.
And because it was intense. It was really
Mm-hmm.
intense. People were, this was like it was brutal for me to see people treat me in this way, and to
Yeah.
experience that, and understand that I allowed it. I
Yeah.
was I allowed it, and I don't anymore. And I
Mm-hmm.
I handled each and every situation. Um, but I believed in people I never should have believed in. I hired
Mm-hmm.
people I never should have hired.
Yeah.
And a lot of it was because I was sick, and I desperately needed people to help me
Mm-hmm.
create this vision, and keep it running. One, even though, because there were some days I couldn't be in the studio, even though I was working at home. I had three locations very far apart from each other.
Yeah.
And, but I needed help. And, I thought I was hiring the right people. And, you know, I was quite surprised, because people
Yeah.
can say a lot of things. They can really fool you. And I was sick, and I wasn't listening to my intuition, which was knocking really, really hard.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just giving people the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
And I never should have. And now I don't. Now it's like, if I have a gut feeling about somebody, done. I don't even want to be around their energy.
Yeah.
So, but we have to listen to that. And so, I go back to, that transparency and that authenticity. It's like, if you can't be vulnerable with yourself, if you can't be authentic with yourself, you can't do this work. You can't be with other people in that way. And I'm at the point in my life where, if I can't have real, authentic relationships with somebody where you can be vulnerable and you can talk
Mm-hmm.
about everything, and they're not going to take it and turn it against you, like, I don't want those kind of relationships. I
Mm-hmm.
want the meaningful ones. I want the soulful ones. I want the ones that have depth. I'm not a superficial person. I
Mm-hmm.
don't, I mean, I like material things. Who doesn't?
Right.
But I'm not a superficial person, and
Mm-hmm.
I'll work really hard for them. I don't expect
Mm-hmm.
anything from anyone.
Mm-hmm.
But if I can't have real relationships with people, I don't want to have them.
Yeah, yeah. And I wanna go back to a place where you were, because I completely understand. I'm that type of person where I don't like superficial conversations. I don't like superficial relationships. I'm a person who believes in relationships, and I believe in cultivating those things. But there are so many people who, again, who either have been hurt or don't know how to trust, and lots of things. It reminded me when you were saying that, you wanted to believe the better good in people, and even though you went against your own intuition, or when you felt, I'm a strong believer that sometimes God will place people in your life to help you when He knows you can't make those hard decisions. especially when you're a business person. I have a friend that for a season, God had me to walk alongside with her in her business, and I wasn't doing anything, but sometimes I would be in on the hiring or the interview process. Um, and for me, because I learned that lesson as a young girl about people, and once I see it, no, we can't, especially in spaces like that business. No, we cannot. It's no way because everybody doesn't want to come in to do what they're hired to do. And then sometimes you have those people who are just wanting to get close to you because they know you're nice. They can see that in you and they can see that, hey, if I need X, Y, and Z there, you know, and so she wanted to save the world. And anyway, so for a season, I was able to walk alongside with her to help make hard decisions. And her heart was so soft, it was still hard for her, even with me saying no. You know, sometimes people take your no as being, oh, you're being a little mean. No, this person does not want help. This person is just giving you a story.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that's all it is. It's a story.
She was fortunate to have you. I didn't have somebody who had my back like that. I had my own back,
Yeah.
and I had lawyers, like really great lawyers.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a very challenging time. But
Yeah.
I learned so much about
Mm-hmm.
myself and about people and about business. And it benefits me now in what I'm doing, which is the best gift of all of it.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're going through it, you can't see it. And that's
Mm-hmm.
when this work is really, really
Yeah.
pivotal because it changes everything. So, my hope is that people can start doing this healing work
Yeah.
because the world needs it.
Yeah. It does. It does. Um, when you went through all of that again, so you went, and we're going back. So you went through what Anthony told you, you got on the regimen, then was hit again. So, and you had an onset of something else that happened to you.
Hashimoto's. Hashimoto's was the label the doctors put on it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but working with Anthony, I realized that that wasn't it. And it was the EBV. And every time I got stressed out or high anxiety, which was 24/7 most of
Mm-hmm.
my life
Mm-hmm.
to this point, it would go from being dormant to coming out. So I would heal it and then it would come back and heal it and come back. And then I realized, okay, I have to take control of this. I don't want to be sick. I don't need to be sick. This is my thoughts, my choices, my actions making my body sick. And it was the only way. I put it this way. I wasn't listening to my intuition. I wasn't following my heart. And my body was getting sick because of it to get my attention because nothing else would. I had an idea, I had a goal, I had to make it happen. This was what I wanted for my life.
Mm-hmm.
And you get so focused. And at that point, I was more in my masculine energy than my feminine energy, which I think is totally wrong for
Mm-hmm.
women. We have to be our feminine selves,
Yes.
and we can balance the energies because we all have the masculine and feminine. But at that point, I was operating in build, create, build, create. I was such a visionary, and it was just starting. Like what I built is nothing compared to what I'm going to build, but
Mm-hmm.
it's like um I had to come to the conclusion that I was the reason I kept getting sick and these symptoms kept coming back. Doctors could put a name on it, try to prescribe me a pill, but that didn't work. Even going through like postmenopause and menopause
Mm-hmm.
and postmenopause, I tried the hormone treatment, I tried all that stuff. It didn't work for me. It was doing the work and not avoiding it. And every time it would start to come back, go back and reassess. And then finally, after my father passed away, it was like I did all of it. I
Mm-hmm.
was just like, this is just not who I am. This is
Mm-hmm.
not going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I did the mental, the emotional, the spiritual work because the physical is just a product of everything being balanced.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was when I really got healthy. It was really taking a good look at what I was allowing into my life and the choices I was making and the people. And that was when I was like, I'm done. I don't want those people in my life. I don't want that energy. I
Mm-hmm.
know what I created, I know what I left behind, I know where I'm going.
Mm-hmm.
But it was just that inner work that changed everything for me because I'm healthy
Mm-hmm.
and I have a sound, like I feel whole.
Mhm.
And
Mm.
you're sick, you don't feel whole. And the biggest message is that anybody can do this healing work at any time in their life, whether
Mhm.
they're, hopefully you do it in your 20s and you
Mhm.
don't go through all of this.
Mhm.
But you can do it in your 30s, your 40s, your 50s, your 60s, your 70s. I have an 80-year-old who's going through it, and she's now contemplating, what's her next move at 80 years old. And I think that's fabulous.
Yeah.
We can create at any age, but we also have to do this work because we all have something to contribute. We all have something we're passionate about, but it's
Mhm.
it's in not doing this work where we allow fear and ego and things that are so unimportant that we create, that we have to uncreate, that gets in our way, So, doing this work, you will find your pathway. A lot of people who have read the book, some strangers have reached out to me and be like, this is what was happening to me. This is what I'm doing now. Your book inspired action. You inspired me to do this. And I've always been a guide in that way. Like
Mhm.
I can talk to somebody and know exactly where they're headed and
Mhm.
exactly what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And like, I've just always been intuitive that way. And, I used to warn people, but I don't do that anymore. I'm like,
Mm.
they'll learn their own lessons the hard way. I'm not going to offer the information,
Mhm.
unless they really want it. But yeah, so it's like I can, now it's like I follow that guidance and that intuition 24/7,
Mhm.
I know who's ready for it and who isn't ready for it. And it's one of those things too that when a person is ready, they'll know.
Mhm.
But unfortunately, they continue to go through X, Y, and Z until they get to that point where you're almost in a hopeless situation. And that's what I hope to help people from getting to that point by
Yeah.
doing this work, because it benefits all of us,
Mhm.
and it's something that we can all do. And it's a guide that's very actionable, and everyone can do it.
Mhm.
And the work is all internal. It's
Yeah.
not outside of yourself,
Yeah. Yeah.
but asking yourself those hard questions. It's bringing up all those things you suppress, and it's dealing with that pain and moving from it, because there's a lot of beauty in pain and grief, and how you evolve out of it. Even
Mhm.
when you lose loved ones, there's a big there's life-changing things that happen with that turn out, looking back, to be really beautiful moments in your life.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and you can't always see it when you're going through it. You can't.
It's very
Um, I used to be a chaplain and walk in with people who were transitioning and then those who were left behind. The work that is done in it, it can be very beautiful and the outcome can be very, very beautiful um, with the loved ones that are left. Um, what I love about your book is the actionable steps that you have when you finish each chapter, those questions, and the way that you tell your story, and then it's like, okay, now here are the questions that I need to really sit with myself. First of all, where do I see myself in her story at this stage of her story? And then how can I really apply this to my life? I want you to tell us where can we get your book? And I want you to tell us where we can find you, more information, and um, if you don't mind, what are you working on next, or what are you working on now?
Two more books. One is on leadership, and one is on the power of being a woman.
Mm,
Yeah, I think there's a lot that we have to really learn from who we are and how we experience life and relationships. So very, very, very good. I'm very excited about them, but it'll be probably another 18 months to 2 years before they're out, but I'm working on them.
yeah.
Excited about, but yeah, so the book is available at every bookseller, online or in the stores around the world. It's a global release,
Hmm.
in America, London, Europe, Australia, and India right now. And my website is valentinagaylord.com. And there's an email on there if people want to reach, people reach out to me and ask me questions, and I always respond because, anything to help people heal and understand the journey. But the wonderful thing about the book is everything is actionable, and it's, even though I share my story, people can relate to my story because
Mhm.
everybody has been through it in some way or another. You don't have to be a business owner to go through betrayal and
Mhm.
horrible situations. But for people who are in abusive relationships or um, unbalanced, unhealthy, or
Mhm.
dysfunctional relationships, or anything that's bringing them a life that is out of balance, this book is for them
Yeah.
because it's going to help you do the work and really turn inward and look at who you are and bring out the most beautiful parts of you,
Mhm.
and heal the parts that maybe weren't
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
amazing,
Yeah.
because we all have this great light within us. But with that said, there are some people that are put on this earth just to be teachers,
Mhm.
and they're the most challenging and the most difficult, but you can heal from them, you can get over them, and you can move on from them.
Mhm.
You have to look at them as teachers,
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
wake you up because you're the special one. You're the one who has something great to contribute to this world. So my hope is that it reaches all of those people who, you know, need to be healed in that way, or who are ready to do this work, because I think it's powerful work.
Yeah. And to all of you that are listening today, whether you are on Facebook or on listening to on one of the major platforms that you choose to listen from, I want you to go and look in the description and find the links. And I want you to get this book. I have my book because I oftentimes go and yeah. Um, it sits on my bookshelf right here. I used to have it. It was sitting behind me at one point, but I did some rearranging. But for me to be able to say that a book helps me, and I'm a reader that I read, and so I take my time and I eat and I digest and I use and you know, um, your book has really touched me. Like I said, I've told my friends, and um I have friends and sisters that I told them I was interviewing you, and I know we had to change um, times and things, but I was so excited because I told them that they needed to hear you. I said you have to hear her story. I said if you hear her story, I said it's going to be a life changer. It's going to, because oftentimes people have to hear from others who have experience what they have experienced to understand that what I need is really within.
It is. Everything, all of our answers are internal. They really are. We don't have to look outside of ourselves. I mean, there are some cases where, you know, you do need doctors and things
Hmm.
like that. This is not saying that you know, the, it's not saying, like if you have cancer or something like that,
Right.
but doing this work is going to make your healing process more manageable.
Hmm.
You're going to understand it. You're going to heal your body in ways you never thought you could. And your mind, your heart, your soul. I mean, it's really important work, and that's the message, is just everyone can do it. We are
Hmm.
all capable of it. And this is a guide that helps you do it in a way that is actionable, and
Hmm.
like, you can achieve this. Anyone can achieve this. And this guide just helps you get there. And I think, I mean, I was when I was writing it, I wanted to be gentle, but I wanted to get the point across. But I wanted people to understand, because most people feel alone when they're
Hmm.
going, as they feel isolated, they feel alone, they are in pain.
Hmm.
I wanted them to understand that this is all teaching you something. This is evolving you, and growth is imperative. We are always learning, we are always healing, we are
Hmm.
always evolving.
Hmm.
But this book gives you the tools to manage it in a
Hmm.
beautiful way, and then it becomes second nature.
Hmm.
And then it's like, if you have a thought that comes into your head, you're like, where did that come from?
Right. Right.
The old way of thinking is gone. Who you
Hmm.
once were is gone. You've evolved. And that's the goal. That's why we're here, to continue to evolve towards enlightenment. We're not
Hmm.
here to stay stuck. We're not here to live this mundane
Right.
life.
Mm-hmm.
We are here to be bright and brilliant, and
Mm-hmm.
all of that comes from within. And nothing you do is going to give you that light other than the work you do internally. So
Mm-hmm.
we're all here to shine brightly.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah. And reading your book, it helps people to get out of that place of stuckness
Yeah.
and realize that is not your home. You don't have to live there.
But you know what? You're going to go in and out of it at different times. Like,
Mm-hmm.
when you're transitioning in a career or a home or a move or some kind of process, there will be moments of stagnation. There will
Mm-hmm.
be times where you feel stuck. But in those moments of stagnation and stuckness is where so much growth happens. You may not see it in the moment,
Mm-hmm.
but when on the other side of it, you're like, oh, that's what that was.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're stuck and you're feeling stagnation, rest your body.
Yeah.
Read, read
Yeah.
books, read this book, read books that speak
Mm-hmm.
to you, and just get through that time, because on the other side of it is so much more. We are always evolving, we are always growing, and it doesn't matter what people have told you
Mm-hmm.
about you. You know deep down within that you're here to do something, and only you know what that is. And this work uncovers that
Mm-hmm.
beautifully. It
Mm-hmm.
helps you find that. And it's a special place to be, is to really own who you are
Yeah.
and know who you are. And,
Mm-hmm.
it takes courage, it takes acceptance, it takes grace,
Mm-hmm.
grace
Mm-hmm.
for where you're at, grace for where you're going,
Mm-hmm.
and the people in your life, the good and the bad ones,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
then living with discernment and understanding you're just not on my level energetically.
Mm-hmm. And it's
Like,
all right.
yeah, it's okay. You want people who are going to evolve and grow with you,
Mm-hmm.
not people who are going to try to keep you down and keep you stagnant or stuck, or,
Mm-hmm.
the negative people in your life. It's not that they're bad people. Maybe they're just teachers. Maybe this is how they're always going to be, or maybe they're not ready to evolve and they're afraid of where you're going and you're going to leave them behind, because you
Mm-hmm.
will. And
Mm-hmm.
that's okay.
And
But
that's
at some point, they may evolve, they may not, but your evolution is the most important thing.
mm-hmm.
And if you're a mom, it's incredibly important, because how you evolve, your children evolve.
Mm-hmm.
And when you do this work, you can teach your children how to do this work, and they can grow up and hopefully bypass all the things you did, that
Mm-hmm.
couldn't.
Mm-hmm.
And children are they get it,
Yeah.
especially when their parents can be that vulnerable and they're open with
Mm-hmm.
them, they're authentic. They want that connection. They crave that connection. They're souls too.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
it's a powerful thing to recognize your light within you, and then help your children see it in themselves, because children today, kids today, young adults have more pressures and social media and all that stuff, and those influencers that are causing more harm than good.
Mm-hmm.
I don't ever want to be considered an influencer, because I don't want to. I think a lot of influencers abuse that
Yes.
power, and I don't ever want to be one of those people. And raising your kids to understand, how
Mm-hmm.
how the internet can be a very dangerous thing, especially if you're mental health.
Mm-hmm.
So being there
Mm-hmm.
for your children in a way, once you do this work, is a game changer, because you see things differently. You help them see things differently, and you can really help them understand, you know,
Mm-hmm.
why you went through this, the lessons you learned, and then they're
Mm-hmm.
like, "Oh, I got it." Now it's
Mm-hmm.
like, when I see this coming, I know what to do.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
I have to look inside. Why do I want this person in my life?
Mm-hmm.
What is this person contributing to my life,
Mm-hmm.
and what are they doing to either evolve with me or bring me down? Like, you look at relationships differently, but until
Mm-hmm.
you know who you are and you do this work, you're just sometimes, like I was, living in a shell. I
Oh
was a
yeah.
shell.
Oh yeah. And when you discover who you are, you have to get to a resolve of being that person.
Yes.
Because who you are at the core may not be the idea of who you want to be. When I say things like that, I mean, sometimes we have a picture created within ourselves that have been formulated by what we were told or things that people have said. And I want to use me for an example. My idea of who I was or who I was going to be as a mother is not who I am at the core of who God created me to be as a mother. I had an idea of what normal was. And when I gave birth to both my babies, it was anything but what I had envisioned, right? It was like, wait a
Always
minute.
is though. It always is. I mean, motherhood is a completely different story. And it's
Oh,
like you're not given a handbook, like you said.
no.
But the most important thing is that you came into this world. You did this work. You brought them into the world. They
Hmm.
chose you to be their mother. There's good reason for that.
Right.
And but the beautiful thing is who you are and who you've become. It may not be what you thought it would be like, but
Hmm.
it only gets better and better and better. And the fact that you're
Hmm.
conscious of the choices. You're conscious of what you thought it would be like and what it is like and what you wanted, where it's going.
Hmm.
So it's like you have to give yourself grace, especially as
Hmm.
a mother, because we take on the weight of that.
Yeah.
And that's important. But you also have to remember you're bringing these souls into the world.
Hmm.
They have their own journey, and you
Hmm.
can't take that away from them, but you can guide them and you can give them tools. But until you understand those tools, which this book will help you understand,
Hmm.
how can you gift them to somebody else? So, but the other thing too is when you really do this work and you own who you are, you encapsulate that that light comes back into your life. There's no turning back.
Hmm.
And you may have some bad days, you may have some evolving days, but that person is forever with you.
Hmm.
Because once you connect with that light, you can't disconnect. It's too amazing. The feeling is too amazing. The peacefulness, the calmness, no matter what your outside world looks like, once you really resonate with
Hmm.
that light inside of you, yeah, it's a new day.
It really is. It really is. And, you know, it really is. It's more peaceful
Mhm.
being in that light and being who you are at the core than anything else.
Yeah, and that's where you find your soul purpose. You know where your next step is. And, there are people that have these visions of where they want to be and where they want to go, but the programming in the outside world has told them no, because you're this or you're that, or you came from this or you came from that. You can't do this. But deep down inside, you have that longing, you have that pull, maybe to a city or to a career or to something like that. But when you have those things, doing this work will give you the courage to
Hmm.
act on that and
Hmm.
get uncomfortable because that's where the beauty is in that work of
Hmm.
finding that place and doing that, taking that step and
Hmm.
having that faith and knowing that that's where you're going to be. But
Hmm.
doing this work will give you that courage and give you the clarity
Yeah.
to get there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, we're all here to do something great, except for
Yeah.
the teachers. Those teachers, the
Yeah.
teachers are the hard ones, but
Yeah.
they still come into your life for a reason and you do the work.
Hmm.
You don't need them anymore.
Hmm.
They'll be
Yeah.
different, more like mentors. They'll
Yeah.
go from those experience to the beautiful ones,
Yeah.
They'll be
Yeah.
better
Yeah.
people and better people will come in your life and
Yeah.
it'll be good.
Well, I thank you again for joining us on today. I really appreciate you. I appreciate the work that you've done and you're doing, and I appreciate the work that you are working on now. I'm excited for you. I'm excited for our listeners as they go and purchase your book. Again, the link is in the bio. Make sure you go and click on it. Go and purchase yours. I promise you, especially if you are one who likes to journal, I like to journal, you will find yourself not just reading and putting these steps into action, but also journaling your journey along the way.
Yeah,
And so,
I've also just created a workbook and a journal because people have written me and said, I bought the book, I bought the audiobook, and the book is all written up. And they'll send me pictures of like notes and
yeah.
everything. So they had to buy a second book or the audiobook. And I'm like, I'm going to create a workbook. And so I did. I'm working on a workbook. It's thick, but it will help people get through it. And it will help people do the work and not have to write in the book. They could actually write it out and then have a
Hmm.
journal to reflect on.
Yeah, yeah.
But it literally takes you through the stages of the book. So that will be out soon, and I'll probably put that on my website or um, I'm not sure exactly how I'm going to get it out there, but if people want it, they can also email me and I'll send them one once it's printed.
Oh, we're good. We're good. Well, make sure you guys email um and get your copy of the book. and make sure that you do your soul's work and get to the place you're supposed to be, letting go of all that needs to be let go of. Those of you who are suffering from autoimmune disease, especially, I want you to go and get the book. All my friends, all my listeners who I've talked to, go and get the book, because one thing that I know that women have suffered from within this season of life is autoimmune disease, and the rate of women that have said that they've lost hair. If you, those of you who are just listening, if you could see Valentina's hair.
I lost a ton of it. I do have extensions, but it's all growing back now.
Yeah.
So I'll probably have them for like another few months and then they'll be gone. But yeah, I went through the hair loss. I went through physical changes. I didn't even recognize myself at three different times in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And you get to that point, especially as you get older. I mean, I'm 55 now, and I have debunked every myth that has ever been said about pregnancy and perimenopause, menopause,
Yeah.
postmenopause, getting your body back and feeling sexy in your body. I mean, I don't even feel 55, you
Well,
know?
Chad, you don't look it either.
Well,
You
thank you.
don't look it.
Well, thank you. But it's like it's definitely the mindset and it's the work because
Yeah.
we get better as we get older and our soul, like, which is so interesting, it doesn't age.
Mm-hmm.
But like
Mm-hmm.
age is a really a mindset.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The
Mm-hmm.
body does age, but you can support it. And there are actions in the book to help you support it. And my
Yeah.
goal is to age gracefully. I have not succumbed to Botox or anything like that. I'm
Yeah.
not going to.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's just I think doing the work is going to change everything for you in the most positive and beautiful ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I
And you
know
can
it
do
will.
it. And it's not outside yourself. So
Mm-hmm.
everyone can do this work.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, thank you. Thank you again for joining us.
Brianna.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Haven for Soul Care.